everybody, it is April and I am here for the Fall Festival. I'm very excited to be presenting today. Make sure my hat's a little straight. And I want to share with you how you can take a panel and make it into a lap quilt. There are two reasons that I named my presentation Don't Be a Scarecrow, It's Only Fabric and Thread. One of the reasons is because my panel features a scarecrow. Now this panel is quite a large piece of material. So it is about 36 by 42. If you add some borders to this, you can quickly come up with a lap quilt. The reason I said don't be a scarecrow, it's only fabric and thread is because I know that there are some people who are afraid that when they start to make something, they're going to make a mistake. And I don't want you to be afraid to start quilting because you're going to make a mistake. You're going to make a mistake. Don't worry about that. It's going to happen. They make seam rippers for a reason. But if you start out with a project that is easier and you can come out of the project with something that you're proud of, then you should be able to move on to bigger projects. I want you to feel comfortable that you're not going to make a mistake that you can't undo. So we want to take this panel, we are going to add some borders, and we are going to take that, we're going to make a quilt sandwich, and we're going to use our home-based machine along with a Grace hoop frame and quilt it. And you will be surprised at how easy it is. The first thing that we want to do is we're going to take our panel and we are going to cut off the selvage ends. So on each end of your panel, more than likely, you're going to have this selvage. We don't want to keep that on our panel. After we do that, we need to find some coordinating fabric that goes with our panel. Sometimes you can buy panels within a collection of fabric. This particular panel I just took to the fabric shop and I found some matches that I liked. One of the matches was this green. So I want some solids, and then I also wanted something with a little print that was kind of fun. So I found this toss that has scarecrows and squirrels and pumpkins and leaves and things that relate to what's on my panel. Then we have to decide what size we want our borders to be, and that all depends on how big you're going to make your quilt. So you could take this panel and make a queen size quilt if you wanted to, but today we're going to make more of a lap size quilt. I have decided that I wanted to cut out some of this green in about a 3.5 inch strip that I'm going to sew all the way around my panel. Once I do that, then I want to add this fun print border. Before you add your borders, you will want to know the measurement of the edge of your quilt. So since I start on the long side, I need to know how long my long side is. Now the first strip that I sew on, I should be fine because this is width of fabric. The second strip, I'm going to need to have more than one strip in order to make it the whole way along the long edge. What you want to do is you want to take 2 strips and just sew a seam joining them together. This will give you about 80 inches. Now this is going to be more than you need for that first long side of your fabric panel plus the other border. So what you will do is you will take what's left over from the first side, cut it off, and then you will sew it to another strip that's with the fabric so that you are using all of your fabric. Then when you get done with that, if you need more than just one strip of your width of fabric border for the top, you'll take what's left over from your second side and add it to another full width of fabric strip, and so on and so forth, so that you're using all the fabric that you have. So here's the panel with the added green, and it just kind of brings out the green that is also in your panel. Now I am going to take strips of the toss, and I'm going to add those. So when I added the 3 inches, because my panel is 36 inches wide, I added a 3.5 inch border on each side. You have to take off a 1/2 inch for each side because that's your seam allowance. I use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll have a 1/4 inch in between the panel and the strip, and then I'll have another 1/4 inch that I lose when I add this print to the other side of the strip. So essentially, I can add 6 inches to the 36 inches, 3 inches on this side, 3 inches on this side, and I can come up with 42 inches. This strip is 4.5 inches. So again, I lose a 1/4 inch on each side, which means that I will be adding 4 inches to each side of my panel plus an existing border. So you can see how quickly you can make this quilt bigger. Once I add this, it's 8 inches to the 42, and that makes a 50-inch quilt. Then, of course, you're also adding to the top and the bottom when you add the border around the whole thing. So it's a quick quilt. Let me add my strips of fabric with the toss to the edge of this quilt and the border, and we'll see how it looks. Something that I like to do when I add my borders to my panel is, first of all, I will add a border on the long sides, so a border on the long side and a border on the long side, and then I add my top and bottom borders. I also like to kind of fold, let's see, I'm going to be, okay, so I fold the quilt or the fabric like this and like this. So this border is exposed for me to add my next border, which is going to be this toss. So it will fold over and I will sew along this side. But I don't have a lot of excess hanging off. This gives me more control while I'm sewing. Just a little tip. I'll be using a 1/4 inch seam to sew. And as I go along, I'll make sure that my edges line up. I have put the scarecrow panel with the added borders on my design wall. And you can see how quickly it's growing. That's 56 inches long. So you can stop here, or you can just keep adding borders until it's as big as you want it. The next thing we need to do is we need to make a quilt sandwich. To make a quilt sandwich, you're going to need some free table space. You will also need an adhesive spray. I use a 505 adhesive spray by Otis. Your backing fabric will be the first thing that you lay down. Put a light bit of adhesive on that backing fabric. The next piece of your sandwich is going to be batting. Your backing and your batting should be bigger than your quilt top. So you will want that to stick out past the edge of your quilt top. And you'll want to make everything smooth. The nice thing about batting is your fabric wants to stick to it. So I'm going to fold forth my quilt top and keep my backing straight underneath. I'm going to spray some adhesive and then push my quilt top over the adhesive so it sticks. Here I have my quilt sandwich and my hoop frame. I have a Baby Lock Jazz 2 on my hoop frame, and I have a Sure Stitch Elite regulator so that I don't have to worry about using a foot pedal. So I place my sandwich on my hoop frame. The little hook goes on the front, and I can feel where the hooks are. Now, right now, I don't have anything to hook into because I'm at the beginning of my quilt. And the more fabric and quilt batting that you have at the top of your quilt sandwich, the easier it is to load. You want to make sure that this little elastic piece is secure. Ask me how I know. Because if it is not, you can sew it onto your project. There are also clamps to go on the front. So I'm going to hook this in, and these can help you adjust your project. So I did a needle up, needle down to pull my bobbin thread through the top. I keep a pair of tweezers in case my bobbin thread isn't very long so that I can pull it up. And that's so that you don't have anything on the back of your quilt. I've got my foot down. If you don't put your foot down, you will have bad stitches on the back, and you won't realize it until maybe you've already gone all the way across because you didn't check the back. So I'm going to hit start, and you can hear it's stitching. I'm going to run a little basting stitch, and running the basting stitch allows me to check that my stitching is okay. This little basting stitch will be hidden behind my binding, so it will not show unless I inadvertently go too far out. Alright, and then I'm going to run a basting stitch down the side. Now I am going to start to quilt my border and the area that I can reach. A loopy meander or a meander are my best friend. I'm just going to do a meander. So I'm making sure that my foot is down, and I'm going to click start on my stitch regulator, and I'm just going to slowly do a meander. And a meander is exactly what it sounds like. You are just meandering around your quilt. I have a variegated thread because I really like a variegated thread. I don't need to get in any big hurry. And I will slowly So I've come to the end of my row, and what I want to do is move my quilt up so that I can stitch my next row. And then I'm going to pull my quilt. I want some of my stitching to show. And then I'll use my sewing machine to help me determine exactly where I want to put my quilt. So I can still put the machine there and see that it's still able to quilt in that area. Not that I want to quilt in that area, but I don't want a gap in between my rows. So now I'm going to feel where my middle clip should go, because I can feel the hooks back there. I'll put my middle clip on, and then this fabric I will fold so that it is on the top of my clamp. That way I'm not building on the back, so I'm not going to impact my throat space right now. Eventually, and depending on how big your quilt is, your space will get smaller because even on the back, you're going to have more fabric. But right now, I'm good. Then I can also feel back here where this should go. It's going to go here. And you just learn over time how much area, how much you need to move your quilt. And I'll move this over here. So if I go here, I have to about right there that I can quilt. And I don't want to go quite that far because then I'm just going to be quilting a straight line. And what you can do is you can put a piece of tape right here to denote that you don't want to go to this line. All right, now I want to put my front clamps on. My back clamps are on. And then I'm going to hold this thread and do a little basting. That also tells me that I can't go any further. This time I'm going to make my meander a little bigger. I hope that this tutorial was helpful, and I hope that you will take the opportunity to find a cute little panel or a cute big panel, add some borders, and make a quilt. Don't be a scarecrow, it's only fabric and thread.